Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Seeds of Liberty podcast, episode 25. So before we get into anything, we're going to go to Jeremy for the no-gov license.
Yes, the Seeds of Liberty podcast is covered by the BIPCOT no-gov license. This allows for reuse by anyone except for governments and the agents thereof. You can find out more information about that at bipcot.org.
So today we have Donnie Giebert, who from the Force to Freedom podcast. He's a regular on our show occasionally. So he's ex-Army, ex-Navy, 17 years active, 2 inactive. And we're going to be talking about the idea that, or the criticism of anarchism, that it is a utopian, idealistic dream. It'll never happen. Stop trying. You think everybody is an angel. You're not living in the real world, kind of thing. So we're gonna kind of dissect, take apart, and analyze that idea. So I do get this a lot from people, and it's kind of funny because I think the reason that, anyway, I'll speak for myself, is the reason that I don't trust any politician or bureaucrat or government in general is because I think it's a Mises quote, right? That he says if you something like if you discount if you discount man's action by his fallibility, then you must also discount government entirely, something like that. If you truly believe that people are fallible, then people in power not only will be fallible, but will be even more fallible, because the kinds of people that are attracted to power are not, decent, everyday, moral, compassionate sort of people. Because those are the people that just want to lead their lives, raise their kids, earn enough money to put food on the table, and be a nice guy. Not the kind of people that want to subjugate their neighbor or their town or their county or their state, or even the extreme sociopath that wants to rule over 300 million people. That's just not something that normal people want to do, and for this reason I tell people that we have more in common, as people who live in the United States have more in common with people who live in, let's say, Iran, Iraq, or Afghanistan than we do with our own political masters. Because in that sense, we all basically want the same things. We're the little people. We are, the tax cattle of every so-called nation state. So we all have that in common, and and I think that's what. So that's basically. I think that people are generally good in that sense. Most people don't want to, use violence to achieve their goals, or, use theft to get ahead in life, because most people understand that to be wrong. So what do you guys think?
Well, I the whole idea is, I mean, it does. I get it a lot too, and it is pretty funny because that it's one of those things that's like used as a mic drop almost by statists. They think, oh, you just want a utopia, and it's a it's a word. Obviously, in case for people who are just listening to this, we're short Dave this week, but I'll throw in some of his words so you don't miss him too much. It's
I'm not sexist, but
no. I was going to say it's a bit of sophistry
right.
to throw that word out, because it's it's one of those things people throw out and say, okay, that's you're after this impossible dream, so we don't even have to consider what you say,
right.
Without bothering to examine what is being presented. Because again, like you said, I'll speak for myself. Am I looking for a utopia? No. Do I expect a stateless, anarchic, whatever you want to call it, society to be a utopia? Absolutely not. There's that Jefferson quote about what dangerous freedom, and I'd rather that's what I'd prefer dangerous freedom to
most people prefer the peace of despotism to the tempestuous sea of liberty.
Oh, that's a different one I was thinking of. But either way, same thing. That's the reverse of it. It's the same thing, though. I know that. Obviously we can't know exactly what will happen in that hypothetical society, but I do have a pretty good idea that absolute freedom comes with it extreme responsibility, and it's not going to be easy. But I'm still willing to work towards that. That still sounds good to me, better than having my life micromanaged by local, state, federal, any type of government, anybody else other than myself, governing how I do things, does not sit well with me. So I would rather deal with the dangers of being free. So it in no way, is a utopia that at least I'm seeking. I'm just seeking freedom and to give the same respect to everybody else, to let them be as free as they possibly want to be without imposing or aggressing against another. And that's, if that sounds like a utopia to people, well then, okay, you can call it a utopia, but it's still, as you started to say, most people everywhere just want to get along. They just want to get by. They just want to be happy. They just want to, like you said, raise their kids, have fun, make friends, get together with family, all these things. Like, that's what most people want. So those people, they don't realize that they're actually after the same thing we are. We've put the pieces together and we're like, okay, well, yes, we want these things. Why shouldn't we have them? And even if you are to think that it's a pie in the sky dream, because yes, at first glance, I can understand that. I went through that phase too. When I was a minarchist, I looked at the anarchists and scoffed at them and said, yeah, it's a great idea, but it can never happen. So I understand when people say that. I really do, because I lived it. I was that. I was in their position. But it's a matter of looking at it more closely. But even if it is just a pie in the sky to you at the moment, it's still, if you can still look at that and say that is ideally what I would want, regardless of whether you think it can happen or not. If you can at least be honest enough to say, yes, a society like that, being free, interacting voluntarily with people, like, yeah, it's great. It sounds wonderful. Isn't it something we should work towards then? If you can at least agree that much, like, why would you not work towards it, even if you think there's a possibility that it can't? Doesn't the possibility that it can drive you enough to say, right, okay, even if it is a utopia, which, like I said, I think it's silly to think that, because it's not. There's a lot of responsibility involved. But even if there's the chance that you could be part of making that happen, why wouldn't you want to take that? That seems insane to me. What do you think, Donnie?
I think you kind of hit something there where, people tend to be very lazy. Yeah. But I kind of come from this place where I for so many talks that we have with people on, it covers such a broad number of topics, you start to think that humans are really stupid. Just inherently, there's something wrong with them. Like you were born to be this mooing cow in a field, and all you really want is to chew the cud and never ever think that someday you're going to be a hamburger, ever. And that's it. But the more I'm doing this, the more I'm starting to see how really motivated people are. They're super, super intelligent, because how else could somebody literally think of every possible logical fallacy to try and just quell this idea of chaos in their mind? How does somebody come up with that many fallacies? Like, I don't even remember them all. I have a logicalfallacies.info. I have to reference that thing. It's 5-6 times a week to, like, I know that's fallacious, but I don't even know which one it is. So I have to go look it up again, and it's like, oh, that's a weak analogy. And
it's like, you're wrong. Hold on, give me a second.
I know you're wrong, and I'll tell you why in a second.
I saw somebody, they had a meme, and it was the amount of information it takes to debunk bullshit is one order of magnitude greater than it takes to produce bullshit. Yeah. And they're so right. They're absolutely so right. It absolutely, yes, it is. It really is perfect. I don't know if it was kind of engineered conference or how they came up with it, but it really, really is just so solid. And the amount of work that people will go to maintain this little utopia in their own head. They think the system's as good as it's going to get, and they don't want to really examine it. They don't want to go through that, because I think they inherently know the process is grueling, but at the same time, they recognize that I could just come up with a real quick fallacy and get myself out of this, and they just keep going and going and going and going until at a certain point you're like, all right, we're totally to the bottom of the list. What do we do now? We've gone through every possible objection, And then what is it? They don't even go with fallacy. They go with the self-reinforcing assertion, well, this must be utopian. Yep. And it's like, well, goddamn, can you ever pin yourself down to one idea and stick with it? Apparently not. It's just we're gonna bounce around to maintain that chewing of the cud in the brain, and just hope it all kind of wish it into the cornfield and hope it goes away. And, oh, it's maddening.
Yeah, I think for me, a proof that people are genuinely good-hearted is the fact that people want a government and vote. Because people want to help the poor, they want to help the sick, the elderly, they want to help the children. They think, public education is the best way. They think Obamacare is the best way. They think so. So it's all with good intentions, right? So that's the goodness in them coming out. However, unfortunately, they don't understand what the extent of the effects of their actions when they support a violent institution such as government. What that has, it's the unintended consequences, right? It's the unseen that gets really hammered and demolished because people lack of economic understanding, just lack of what politics is, what voting is, what government is, what is taxation, what's a law. These simple concepts can really save a lot of suffering. It's like you can save more lives by taking away pens from politicians than taking away guns from people, right?
Right.
So I think that's, for me, that's proof that people are genuinely good-hearted. They want to see a better world. They're just confused and, like you said, Donnie, lazy and ignorant, economically ignorant, and that's unfortunate.
Just a quick cursory look at an idea, but never any look at the method.
Right.
It's like, oh, this is a great idea, and how are we going to bring it to table? And nobody asks that. It's like, oh, yes, we should feed the poor. Well, we're going to do that by ransacking your house. Oh, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, now all of a sudden, the methodology is important when we put you on the hook for it. You didn't want to pay attention to that. It was all about the idea. And a lot of times, I kind of lead off with that in a lot of conversations. I don't care what your idea is. Tell me of your method. Let's have a real conversation. Because whatever if I said this before, if you want to give, if you want to bring the idea you have as a caffeinated dessert for breakfast, then, well, hot damn, we have Starbucks. But what would you think of Starbucks if they were ushering somebody in through the door with a shotgun and telling them they had to go buy a cup of coffee? How long does that idea actually work before people just start walking way around the Starbucks and they don't even go near the place? So, but people don't examine that at all. They're just like, oh, yes, caffeinated dessert for breakfast. Wonderful idea. And that's it. That's it. They move on with their day.
Let's force it on everyone.
Yes.
Yeah, well, it's getting people to see the force is usually the tricky part in that,
Yes.
Because, when you get into the discussions about taxation and all that stuff, just getting the average person to grasp and accept the concept that taxation is actually theft, because it's it's more specifically, it's extortion, but which is just a form of theft. And all real, quote unquote, real crimes are actually versions of theft anyway. That's the overarching theme and everything, because even murder is theft. But it's getting people to see that, because when you get into those discussions, you end up with I pay my taxes because I want to, because I want these things, and and then trying to get them to explain, get them to understand rather, what happens if you don't, if you decided one day you didn't want to, and then what would happen to you? And getting them to that point to understand that. And there's the road, like Donnie was saying, where you throw just as many fallacies as you can, and you just keep throwing them. There's a lot that can go from just in that one argument, just all the way in, taking it all the way to the end, because they just keep blocking it out, because it's tough. As I said before, I've been there. I know it. we all do. We all go through that period where you come to these realizations, and you fight it. Most people, I fought it hard. So I understand how people and why people fight it. It still just happens to be frustrating, because, of course, you meet other people like ourselves on the other side, and it's like, all right, there's more of us. Okay, now we just need to get a few more and a few more. And when you run your head into the wall of these people, and then they throw these silly non-arguments at you, that are, it's utopian. And, I think we were discussing that a little bit before we started recording about the fact that all forms of government are utopian. Most forms of society that have been tried are a utopia to somebody. That's why they were tried. That's what it is. It's somebody's version of utopia. So that's, even if you want to consider, somebody who's looking for a stateless society to be utopian, well, okay, you're in the same boat as everybody else. So why is that a problem then? There's actually, to me, there's so many ways to defeat that argument. Just with using logic, which of course is another problem, because the average statist doesn't really grasp logic. The
average human doesn't grasp logic. They don't spend any time.
This is true.
Past basic math, they don't really do anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to take that course intentionally in college.
Yes.
So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily, it's inherently statist. I'd say it's inherently human, at least in our society, in the empire, to avoid it.
Well, all the people in our empire and everybody else's empire are statists. So,
but that's besides the point.
Yeah, but you're right. But you're right. It's just the way things are. And I mean, I've said that plenty of times before. That's definitely one of the things that I believe has been purposefully left out of the curriculum, as it were. It's actual economics, logic beyond the field of mathematics, real history, and philosophy.
Yeah.
Those four things are purposefully kept out of people's reach, or they are degraded and mocked, intentionally, to make it out like, anybody who takes those things, I mean, I know that's when I was going to school, back in the 80s and 90s, when the question even of taking electives like that were offered, they were, just everybody automatically, it was they were conditioned to be like, no, you don't want to take that stuff. You don't want to do that stuff. You don't want to be involved in that stuff. Yeah. So I never did. And, again, I understand where people are coming from, because it was only a few years back that I started to really reinvestigate all these things and learn what I'd been missing. And, again, now I can put the pieces together a lot more quickly because I have the tools, but most people don't. But like I said, there's so many ways to attack the utopian argument. Like I said, to me, it doesn't really matter which way you go with it.
So one of my favorite Larkin quotes is basically, if enough people go out to vote because they want something good to happen, that's enough people that could do that thing voluntarily of themselves without having a government, without having a ruler, and without extorting everybody else. Because it's just kind of funny, like, so many people go out and they support government because they think it's this mythical institution that has magical powers, superhuman abilities that the common person simply cannot do. We will never be able to defeat China or Russia or any other, or Al Qaeda or the Taliban or all these boogeymen. They're not it's completely beyond the capabilities of the average person, right? We need this deity, right? And that's why Larkin always says that statism is the most dangerous superstition. It is a religion, right? It is a deity. It's no longer divine right of kings. It's now divine right of politicians, and we deify those in the representatives in our that is the modern day aristocracy, representative democracy, and it's just kind of funny how it's evolved, and I think that the natural evolution will be to discard this superstition as well. Once we begin to realize, wait a minute, if I steal from my neighbor, that's theft, but if I elect someone, isn't that also theft? Like, when you make that simple connection. And then, we tell her, wait a minute, isn't that theft? Like, and the other thing I was going to say is, when somebody says that's utopian, that's basically an insult, right? That's slander right there. You're trying to just, destroy the person by just insulting them. It's basically, saying racist, bigot, or, whatever other, insult you can think of. And again, one of my favorite Socrates quotes is when the debate is lost, slander is the tool of the loser. because that is not an argument at all. It's utopian. No basis in logic, no basis in reason, no facts, no evidence. That's utopian. Drop the mic and I'm out. Right?
So one of my personal hatreds is the burden of proof fallacy. And today I'm going to go the other way with it. I kind of got called short notice. Dave's house got literally, like, Dave's shit got hit by lightning.
Oh, wow.
So I got called 8 minutes before Dave was planning on being here, and the normal chaos gave me a half-hour lead time. But still, when we were discussing this, it was like, what are we going to do? Current events or whatnot? So in the utopian theme that we have going here, I've decided to pull up 2 websites of 2 of the leading candidates. Now, you would think, if we are not talking about utopianism, the anarchists are utopians, I think bringing up the 2 statist frontrunners right now is probably the best way to debunk this utopian theme, because rather than what we're saying, let's just take the oppositional position against the statist and use their own terms, right? So I'm looking at Donald Trump's website, and I click on positions. And there is one issue. Now, everybody in their mind is drooling and losing their mind over Donald Trump. Either they love him or they hate him, but there's really nobody in the middle. And this clown shoe has spent how knows how much money on this website, and it has one issue: immigration reform. That's it. That's it. So apparently, when you're not a utopian and you're on the right of this argument, you're totally interested in this one-trick pony called Donald Trump. So you believe that this one guy with a stated position of immigration reform, he's going to fix it all. You're going to throw your vote at this guy because he's got his shit so together that his website, that's going to touch every human in America, has immigration reform as the thing that needs to get fixed.
The Great Wall of America. That's what here.
At which point, I almost want to pick up the utopian flag and say, God damn, I'm utopian. Hell yes, I'm utopian. I believe that maybe there's more than one issue to be discussed.
Right.
Well, for the people that is a utopian fantasy for them, there are those out there that really think that the immigration problem is the biggest problem out there, and a lot of the conservatives and the neocons, those folks, they really believe that everything else is pretty much fine, and we just need to get a Republican back in there, and we need to take care of immigration, and everything else will be fine. So for them, I guess that would be their utopian candidate. Makes sense.
So yeah. I mean, it's really hilarious, that all we just need a wall, right? That's going to solve our problems. We just need a wall, and the fact that Mexico is not willing to pay for this, that's the real problem.
Yes.
That's going to solve, that's going to solve the national debt. That's going to solve, kids they have no skills when they come out of government schools. That's going to solve the war. That's going to solve the the welfare state and people, the permanent underclass, and that's going to solve it all. The Great Wall of America. That's what we need. And what's also funny about that is that the reason that people don't like when quote unquote illegals coming into the country and doing whatever they do is basically for statist reasons. It's kind of funny. Like, they don't pay taxes, they don't contribute to this, right? It's all for statist reasons.
They get welfare,
right? Yeah, subsidized housing. I mean, it is crappy, but it's all for statist reasons. Like, but then you look at do they work? Well, yes, they do work. Do they do the jobs that are neurosurgeons complaining about the immigrants? No, their job is not endangered. And really, one of my favorite quotes by the comedian Doug Stanhope is like, if you feel threatened that your job is going to be taken away by a guy who comes in here with no shoes, with ripped pants, with no shirt, doesn't speak the language, and came here like on a banana truck, if you feel threatened that he's going to take your job, maybe, just maybe, you have a shitty job, and you need to work on your own skills. And it's not his problem; it's your problem. So.
I like to point out the absurdity that when you look up the definition of anarchy and monarchy, like they both come from the Greek. Anarchy is no rulers. Monarchy is one ruler. Yet, in almost every dictionary you look for, you will find that anarchy is usually listed as a synonym for chaos, bedlam, some sort of, fire and chunks of concrete are falling from the sky, and all your hair is falling out and you're bleeding tears. And okay, fine. You go look at monarchy and it is a king. Now, what kind of absurdity do you have to believe that the difference between complete and utter bedlam and absolute utopia is one fucking guy? Are you shitting me? This doesn't work in a bar room, let alone in a country.
Right.
Like, come on, one guy. So, I mean, you kind of have to, at some point, something's got to catch up where you start maybe thinking, there's a chance I'm getting propagandized here that a certain concept is really bad for rulers. Not necessarily for you, but it's really bad for this preferred group of people who like to take charge of things and live at, basically at the expense of you. Nobody really takes that basic economic look. Hey, we've just added a bunch of middlemen, and they don't really add to the process or do anything. Mm-hmm. They just hire guys with guns to harass people who are actually producing something, inherently making it more expensive. Mm-hmm. But just remember that one guy, he's making the difference. Not only is that one guy going to make a difference, but he's going to do it with one issue and one wall.
Right.
They're like, come on.
I actually heard, I can't remember where I was. I'm pretty sure it was in person too, and it wasn't an online conversation, which is usually all I have because I'm either walking dogs or in my house. But somebody actually said to me that not only did they want, where they, obviously they had a problem with illegal immigrants and all that stuff, but they actually wanted a wall like China.
Yeah.
Like they thought there should be they literally thought there should be a great wall.
Somebody stole my line, you're saying?
Yes, exactly. But that's why I chuckled when you said that before, because somebody actually said that to me within the last week or so, and I was like,
oh, man, that's funny.
I was in a hurry, so I did not get to, because my instantaneous reaction was just to stare at him blankly. And watch my own eyes, my own brain explode out of my head. Yeah. But because I wanted to say like so many things, like who's paying for this damn wall, and why do you really think like it's so ridiculous? But there really are people out there that think these things. It's scary, and that's who Trump's playing to. Yeah. Because he's not. I mean, what else does he have other than his charisma and his popularity, because he's been a figure in TV and in the social circles for 30-something years now at this point? Since the mid 80s, that's when he came to prominence, as I remember, somewhere in there, early 80s maybe. Mm-hmm. So he's been in the public spheres for a long time. Like, other than that, what else does he really have going for him? He wants to run the country like a business. All right, Romney tried that a couple of years ago. Didn't go so well for him. Now did.
And I quote the statist George Patton, General George Patton: "Fixed fortifications are monuments to man's stupidity." And this guy's running for president on a wall.
Yeah, there you go.
Let that sink in, statists. Let it sink in.
What we need pyramids. That's what we need. If we have a couple of pyramids,
right,
the poor are going to be fed.
Yes.
The sick will be taken.
And it needs to be built with Mexican slave labor. That's what we need on this pyramid. Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
It's
okay. So.
Go ahead,
To give the statists a little bit of credit, now I'm looking at Bernie Sanders' website, and Bernie has listed 10 issues.
Nice. 10.
So let's not pretend that Bernie's a clown shoe like Donald Trump, and maybe he's kind of got some of, at least, now he might not know what he's talking about, but at least he has a volume. He has a very good volume of things to talk about. He's not a one-trick pony. So let's give Bernie let's give him a little bit of credit. And one of the first ones on his website is the second one is getting big money out of politics.
Where's he getting his money from?
And we're done. Just like that. Just like that. He's got a picture of him putting himself an arm around what appears to be a normal guy wearing a ball cap. And the tagline is "Get big money out of politics." And I don't think Bernie Sanders has got less than 100 billion in his war chest right now. Right now, and the vast majority of it has come from every big moneyed interest across the planet.
Has he? Yeah, exactly. Has he turned down any of that big money? And how many years has he been in the Senate now? I don't even know. I only remember
decades,
him.
Right?
Yeah, I know he's been there a while. I only remember like him coming to prominence for me like back in, I don't know, I guess the 07, 08, somewhere around there when I finally started really paying attention. So, but yeah, how much money has he turned down from big money?
To give him credit, he's been singing the same tune for like 30 years. The same way you could go back into the 80s and you could get clips of Ron Paul being a flagrant libertarian in the middle of the 80s when like it wasn't even cool.
Sure.
You could go back and you could find Bernie being a balls-out socialist in the middle of the 80s when it wasn't cool. So we'll give him the consistency card and we'll give him the fact that he's not a one-trick pony.
Okay. Fair enough. What do you got next?
but then when we start getting into a living wage,
what does that even mean?
Yes,
what does that mean?
Let's
define those terms.
Yeah, when you try to pin them down to that.
Shorts. Yeah, want a short circus a status mind? Ask him that question right away. Define that term.
Right. What is a living wage? And I got a strange feeling that what Donald Trump considers a living wage is a hell of a lot different than what we consider a living wage, especially because the picture that comes to mind for Donald Trump is his whichever wife he's on right now with her superb set of tits that look like they were installed by Picasso. And the picture is taken while she's half naked on his private jet. Nice. So I'm going to say that this living wage term seems to be a floating, nebulous, not real term made up by people who are trying to sell you an agenda completely based on nothingness, because nobody under this living wage is going to be able to afford those tits on that plane, except for Donald. And I'm sure that if you were to ask him if he's willing to live without either, you're going to get an emphatic no.
Yeah. So Bernie Sanders. Well, one thing I'll say about him is that I think he's kind of exploiting the anti-rich sentiment that I think was generated out of the bailouts. 2008, 2009 bailouts, because I think most people did not want to bail out like these huge banks and these special interest groups. Most people did not want to do that. I'm pretty sure I could say that, and so and of course as a result the Occupy Wall Street people. So I think there's just a general anti-rich sentiment that people have, and so the evil corporations and all rich people are across the board just stealing from the poor, and if they got rich it's only because they stole from people, and so I think Bernie Sanders, he's doing a pretty good job of exploiting that sentiment. He's riding that anti-rich wave to the socialist utopia, which is going to be a cliff. A cliff off the edge.
Danilo, would you be implying that one of the 10 issues on Bernie's website is reforming Wall Street? I think you are.
Ding, ding, ding. Give that man a prize.
I think you hit that one right on the head. Nice. And I think the fun part you have to take a recognize, Mr. Statist, is that there is no reforming Wall Street, because the people who formed it are the same people who plan to reform it.
Yes.
So do you want to trust the same group of assholes who fucked it up so well the first time that they super, super duper promise to not fuck it up again while taking all of their money for their campaigns? Best of luck with that, Mr. Utopian. Best of luck.
Yeah, well, that's the vicious cycle. Of course they want to. We just need to replace some people and it'll all be better. What about all the thousands that are still there behind the scenes? Oh no, we don't have to worry about them. We're just going to keep replacing them. One of these sets of people will work. but we're the utopians.
And before I close this webpage, I'm going to go ahead and take a shot at the real family values section, because I read the whole thing top to bottom. I did not see the word proletariat once. So I'm going to say that Bernie's a little disingenuous about his socialism, because he's really not even using the proper terms to define his own shit.
Well, I mean, he used to consider himself and openly be a democratic socialist, he would say, right? And he's strayed away from using that term. And so far, much of what I've read from socialist circles has been most socialists disown him and say he's not even a fucking socialist.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah. But that, that could just be, the disillusioned people that really keep insisting, well, it just hasn't been done correctly. Which is funny, because they're also the same people that, if they will acknowledge that certain anarchist societies have been tried and been successful to a certain extent for certain periods of time, they'll say, well, they didn't work. So it's like,
Right.
But why is your system, because it wasn't tried right, any better?
Mm-hmm.
Again, going back to everything's a utopia of some sorts to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to, it's usually a utopia from the perspective of the person looking on, not the actual person. If you want to look at that's what people think is their ideal, even if they believe there will be problems with it, that you'll have to deal with. The person looking from the outside will still say, well, that's their utopia. So again, everything can be a utopia to somebody, even if it's not their own utopia, it could be somebody else's utopia. So it's such, as Donnie said, it's one of those, it's a nebulous thing, just like so many other things. It's people like Bernie, whether they are socialist or not, or progressives, whatever they want to call themselves, statists of that variety, they love to throw out this subjective terminology, but they do it with the passion behind it and the feels behind it. So people latch onto it like these are objective truths they're throwing around, and that it's all, well, of course they say it is, it's the rich, well, define rich. No, it's just the rich. No, yeah, okay, rich. Okay, what is it? The rankings that came out last year. I remember reading about that when people talk, the whole in here with the Occupy that was mentioned before. What there was the 1% versus the 99%. Well, according to the world indexes or whatever quasi government organizations that put these numbers out, or even some of the private ones that look into these things. I mean, they say, I think actually anybody making over, was it 35,000 or maybe 38,000 in worldwide terms is considered a 1%.
Yeah.
So like if you make over $35,000, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, 40,000. If you make over $40,000 a year, you're in the 1%.
So they should
shut the fuck up.
They should change their name. We are the 1%. We are.
Yes. Yes.
But that's the point. So rich is a subjective term. You just hurl that around.
Right.
Like you said, Donnie, they're giving you ideas. They're not giving you methodology, because if they get into the methodology about anything, unless you're a complete idiot or just going to be a complete stubborn asshole, you're not going to have a choice but to recognize that, oh yeah, there's no way to really quantify that the way it's being said and the way it's being presented. Like it's nothing. It means nothing. It can mean anybody to anything, any time, any place, like whatever. Depending on the circumstance, it means something to somebody else. So just throwing it around and attacking these people does nothing. I mean, we've talked about it before. The people that the ones that the people consider to be the quote unquote 1% here, the big corporations, yeah, a lot of the bigger ones got plenty of help from government along the way, and they've been working in this. It was quasi-fascistic, and I guess it still is, because there's so many other elements of, socialism and communism and every other branch of statism in that end of the pool that's been going on here for so long. But it's been there, and so those people, yes, those corporations, yes, they're part of that 1% you want to hate, and they've gotten help. And in a free society, they wouldn't survive. But oh, go ahead, Danny. Sorry.
One of my favorite analogies is when you hear democratic socialist, you should hear child rapist. Because when you take the democratic part off of socialist, it's like taking the word child off of rapist. Because democracy is pretty childish and socialism is pretty rapey.
I like that.
It's like my favorite analogy of Bernie Sanders that I ever heard. It's amazing.
Oh, that's funny.
So one thing that I Jeremy, that was good about the rich, and I would go further. I would say, like, define rich. What is rich? How much do you make? Do you consider yourself rich? No. Okay. So how much is rich? How much does somebody have to make to be considered rich? And so whatever they say, then you're like, okay, so just $1 less is not rich, so that's moral. And then after that, it's immoral to be rich, and you should be, you're the the evil, wicked part of society. You should be taxed to hell, and you should you should pay for the rest of us. And it just doesn't make sense. It's not logically consistent. And not only that, I think most of the the upper income bracket people already do pay the most amount of taxes, like compared to I don't even, it's like, like the top 1%, the top 10%, they pay enormous amount of taxes, and compared to everyone else, it's kind of funny. These people who are, most people take advantage of, government benefits, welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, all these Social Security, and they're always the ones to tax the rich, steal more from them. And they're like, well, you're already benefiting from their theft. And you want more, like you can't, first of all, you're not even producing. You're just benefiting from stolen loot, and you want more theft, right? And then you think about the the economic incentives. Is that, like, what is the incentive of somebody? The more money they make, the more stolen from them. Is their incentive to produce more or to produce less, right? Like the analogy of if the tax on cigarettes tries to discourage buying cigarettes, what does the income tax do? Right? Same sort of thing, which is the whole idea of, people moving their, closing down their plants, going overseas, opening up evil sweatshops, right? Or going to tax havens. Why do people want to do that? They want to keep their money. What a bright idea, If I make my money, I want to keep my money. And actually, that reminds me of a Thomas Sowell quote, which I really like. Is like, I never understood how keeping your money, the money that you earn, is considered greedy, but stealing other people's money is not greedy. I love that. So.
I think there's an argument that could be made that there is absolutely no such thing as greed. There's envy parading itself around as altruism, but there really is no greed. It's usually somebody like, if I had all that money, this is what I would do with it. But beyond that, what is it? It's just somebody who's making his own money and not giving it to other people.
Yeah, and even if there was somebody like that would amass all this great wealth, I mean, I think there really is no way that people could benefit from that person, right? They're going to need they're going to buy enormous mansion. Let's say they're going to have a jet, they're going to have a yacht. Let's say they're going to have maids, they're going to have cooks, they're going to have assistants and butlers. They're going to need a big landscaping. Let's say they're going to hire people. So there's an enormous amount of people benefiting from that. Even if they put in the bank, still the bank is theoretically not fractional reserve lending, but loaning out their money to other people who are using their money. So there really is no way for a rich person to not benefit other people. That's the other thing I like to point out.
Stimulus.
Yeah.
Real stimulus, though.
Right.
Not the stuff we get fed. But yeah, of course, because again, the type of people that attack these individuals that they classify as rich and don't think they're either don't think they're earning it, don't think they've earned it, or for whatever the reason is, they don't take those things into account to begin with. That's why it's so easy for them to hate them, because they're just this nebulous term. They don't look at them as people that actually provide a service for other people, no matter what they do. Just like as you described, those things don't click with them. It's the same reason they hate the CEOs, because they don't, or the owners of or just an owner of a company who's who's owns the means of production and is profit is stealing money from his workers and exploiting the hell out of them, as any good communist will tell you. But these people, they don't see that, because that's what they think. They hear these terms, they know it's a jealousy thing on some level. They're mad that these people have more than them. And is it do some people use unscrupulous terms? Yes, as I was talking about before, with the bigger corporations that have gotten help from government the whole way, and that's how they built themselves up. Yeah, people like that exist. But there's plenty of other people that have started companies from the ground up. It was just like, them and their wife, or just them, or whatever, like building this thing from when they were like in their 20s, and they build it up into this giant corporation, and they employ all these people, and they do all these things. But people just, they live in this box where it's just like, oh, these jobs already existed, so they're just paying people now. It's like, no, you forget about all the work they put in to get up to that point. Sure. That's why they're rich. Oh, yeah. That's why they have more money than you. They put in more hours than you've probably put in any of jobs you've had all together in your life, just to get this thing off the ground. There's so many people out there that are like that. I mean, I'm somebody like that to a very small degree, but I took my company from absolutely nothing. I found a need in the market. I took a shot. 10 years later, I'm still doing pretty well for myself, and I've employed people on and off through the years, and only because I need to support my kids right now do I not employ anybody. But I'm still, I still do, even on a small scale, I do things that I require services or products from other people that are, like, as you were describing, that are benefiting from me giving them my money because I need stuff for my business now. So it's like, but people don't see that. They think they have this tunnel vision. It's like, okay, we're told to hate the rich. Okay, we don't want to think about anything about them. We don't want to think about what they did to get there, or what. It's just, they're rich. They have more money than us. We need to take them down. It's like, it's the whole thing of, they'd rather be together in misery than apart in or how's that thing go? I totally butchered. I was going to paraphrase it, and then I butchered even more. But you know what I'm saying.
There's a YouTube channel called Economics. It's like a small E and then a big E.
I know that guy. I tried to interview that guy, David Angelo. Like, the guy turned me down.
Awesome.
He's awesome. Too busy.
Well, and I could believe that. He's got like a show going with
Comedy Central.
Something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So, but he did a response video to that video where it's like, this is what the tax burden looks like. Yeah. And, this is what you think. And he did a response video to it that is just glaringly, it shows just how bad it really is. And it kind of needed to be said that a lot of people got behind this video and they thought it was like a big deal. And I don't understand why people really get into this class warfare gig. I mean, it's straight up Marxism. The class warfare gig is just straight up Marxism. But I would recommend that little economic series for anybody to go ahead and watch. But if you're not going to do that, Henry Hazlitt's Economics in One Lesson. So many of these issues that people are that Sanders and Trump and anybody else is going to parade across the political parade field. They're really just nonsense. I mean, we're not even talking, by the strict interpretation of Austrian economics, this is nonsense. We're talking, this is pure bunk by anybody's understanding of economics. Economics 101 gets bastardized by politicians. We don't have to talk about 406. right at the baseline 101, supply and demand gets violated with the minimum wage. Mm-hmm. It's screwing everybody it touches. It's screwing the employers. It's screwing the employees. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't think that, it's just because you're economically ignorant. You wouldn't be alone, and I'm not busting your balls, but goddamn, you really have to go learn these things, because if you don't, you're going to be pandering to somebody else's puppetry every day for the rest of your life.
Well said. And I'm just going to preface my response with saying that I'm supporting the representative in 2016 on the platform of breaking up Jeremy's evil monopolistic dog walking campaign. Jeremy has been cornering the market for far too long. We established, I think, in the last episode, right? It's monopolistic competition. The monopoly of Jeremy's style of dog walking.
That's right. I do hold a monopoly on that in my area.
Do you have a license to walk dogs? How do I know you're upholding health codes? Do you have a pooper scooper? How big is your pooper scooper of regulation size?
We've actually discussed that too. I actually don't have a license because there is no such license.
That's the funniest thing.
But I actually did seek one out when I first started my business.
It's amazing how hard you did.
That's how much of a good little statist I was. I kept asking to make sure there wasn't a license that I wasn't being told about because I was willing to pay for it. Like I was proudly telling them, I'm willing to pay money.
Do I have your permission to do this?
Just give me the license. And now that's one of the only reasons that I haven't made a Jeremy-sized shaped impression out my front door on the way to another area at this point, is because I can still get away without being that regulated in my business, because everything else is regulated up, and I'm regulated up the ass and every other and in every other orifice in here in New York. So
no, it's just amazing. You were inviting more, and they said no, we're not regulating you.
Again, that was 10 years ago. I was at least 6 years away from all of this.
Wow.
So I had no idea. That's why I dissolved my LLC finally too, and I would not. I proudly went out and got that. I made sure I had that too. I did everything by the book.
Right.
But so many things I wouldn't have done. But,
yeah, actually, it's kind of interesting, talking about legality and licensure. When I think there was a meme I saw. It's like that awkward moment when you're talking about natural rights and people mention laws. it's like I was at the park today to meet with the kids out there at the park, and we were on the beach, and one of the kids was walking, putting his feet in the water, and it wasn't really a regular beach. It was like all these big rocks, and then this woman I was with, she's like, "Is that legal?" I'm like, he's just in the water with his feet. Like, what are you talking about? I'm more concerned if he slips. I don't care if it's legal. I'm more concerned if he slips. Because I was telling him, like, it's slippery. Be careful. And then she's like, is it legal? Oh, my God.
Is it legal?
Right.
Oh, man.
So, it's like, people have this, they can't divorce the idea of morality and legality. It's like constantly, these are, connected at the hip. And
see,
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I used to think that was true, but I'm starting to believe it's not even that they're joined at the hip. It's just they just think legality rules. It doesn't matter what they actually think. It's a plant's morality, because it's morality isn't even a question anymore. A lot of people you talk to, when you bring up morality, they kind of look at you funny because they because they've never at least in my experiences, and I know for myself too. Before I was introduced to all this stuff. Outside of very spiritual or religious people, I don't run into a lot of people that use the term morals or think about morals, or if they ever do, if you ask them about it, they'll give you some like offhand response, they kind of like wave their hand at you. You're like, oh, of course, yeah, good from right, right from wrong, blah, 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 and like kind of trail off and not really give anything specific, because most people don't consider this. And, I still get funny looks when I try to bring up moral arguments, I mean, heck, I dealt with it with the stuff I'm dealing with. I think we did talk about it on one show where I had to deal with some officers recently, and I brought up morality, and they were kind of like, they really looked at me funny, and then they didn't want to talk to me anymore. And I was like, really? Just because I wanted to talk about morality? Did that really freak you out that much? But people don't think in those terms. So that's why it's not on the forefront. But I was also going to say is, with Donnie, you mentioned about being economically illiterate, basically when it comes to Bernie and his supporters. And it's funny because I've been talking to a lot of people about that recently. It's because anything I hear or read about Bernie or people like him when it comes to his ideas for policies that involves anything in the field of economics, it's all just the word free is in every one of those things. It doesn't matter what it is. Somehow free is worked in there, and that's purposely put there to have people focus on that. It's a buzzword. Free. Okay, great. Free. Because people don't think about where that money comes from. Or even the majority of people who do will say, well, if it's something I like, I'm happy to pay for it. Because again, they don't take into consideration what about all the people that are not happy to do that, and what is the end result of you refusing to do so, standing up and saying, no, I'm not going to do this. What is the end result of that? people, again, just like with morality, people haven't thought about these things. They've never taken it that far down the line. That's why, you know, I know for myself, and I'm sure it was for pretty much all the rest of us, when you finally make these realizations, it really is like something. I mean, for me, it felt like somebody was smacking a brick across my face repeatedly when it finally hit. It was like,
yep. I like to call it the Ron Jeremy commemorative dildo lashing. Because I like to bring out slavery. Anytime somebody starts trying to say something should be legal or is something legal or not, I just jump, well, are you a big fan of slavery? And they're like, Jesus God, no. Like, well, slavery was legal. So when you make an argument that says something should be legal, when you haven't really thought about whether or not it has any kind of right or wrong or anything like that attached to it, you're just willing to instantly make something legal without thinking about it. This is how slaves are made. And maybe you should not talk. And usually the look on their face after that is like you hit them with the Ron Jeremy 14-inch commemorative dildo. Just they don't take it very well, but in true fluffer fashion, they take it pretty well. So,
well, actually, Donnie, I got a response, an interesting response from that rebuttal from the debate I did with John Zimmerman, where I did bring up that slavery was legal, and he says no, actually, slavery was only in the private institutions. It had nothing to do with the government. And I'm like, oh my God, wait a minute, hold on. Are you deriving this knowledge from government history, from your government school? Where are you deriving this knowledge?
No, that's straight out of literacy, because he is not completely illiterate.
Well,
like,
no, that's just
look at this document. It clearly makes black folk 2/3 of a person.
Right.
So,
but
no,
they're not thinking in those terms, because in his mind he was right, and he is partially, because most of the people that, I mean, there were people in quote unquote in the government that did have slaves, but on the whole, the people that were slave owners were private business owners. So technically he's right about that, but again,
private,
that's where they're
in the sense of
industry.
special interest, corporation as today.
But still, that's where their mind stops.
Yeah,
that's why. Government sanctioned. Government was the one who got the slave catching parties together.
Well, yeah,
and it's really not different than bailing out a bank. If you're going to say that, legality and morality, it's all the same thing, then why are you bitching about the bank bailout? You have no high ground to say this law should be a law, but then you can't say, oh, no, not that law. I mean, now we're just on this subjective slip and slide just covered with shit. It makes no sense. It goes nowhere. It's ridiculous, and that's the part where we all have this real problem, because we think logically and we actually think. We're not feeling. We're not bringing preconceived notions, 8th grade civics, and the amount of caffeine they had, to the argument. It's we're thinking and using logic and being consistent and all that stupid shit.
Yeah, I know. We're such nerds.
Yes,
that's what it is. That's what it is. We're the new nerds. We are.
Yes, we are. We really are.
We're the geeks. The guys. Well, it's funny because that's what I was saying earlier about the courses that were purposefully withheld from, at least in my schooling. I remember the way they were treated. That's what it was. People that took that, guys that wanted to take some of those classes were geeks or nerds or fags or whatever they wanted to call me. It's funny coming back full circle of that now, but we are. That's what we are, because now we know this. Now we know this shit. But yeah, it's of course it's frustrating, but that's the whole. It's the little dance you got to play with so many of them, unfortunately, because if you press too hard, you go into the backfire effect we were talking about earlier. Where they just, blinders go up, and it just, no matter what you say, it's actually strengthening their argument, and they've just totally, there's no hope. It's I don't know. Usually it's pretty easy to feel people out for their grasp of logic early on in a conversation, and when you shouldn't proceed. I never listen to myself, though, unfortunately, and I go way too far with people that just have no concept of where I'm headed.
My favorite kind of conversation is the sacrificial virgin. Because there's one guy who's never talked to an anarchist before, and he has no idea what he's doing, but there's 9 people watching him. and I am going to sacrifice that motherfucker on the altar of progress, and that's just the way it's going to go. I'm sorry for you, but these other 9 people are going to walk away with 1 piece of knowledge and 5 more questions that they might answer on their own.
Right,
but you are going to have to be the sacrificial virgin, and I am your proverbial volcano, boy. It's just the way it is. And I hate that it's like that. I really, really hate that it's like that. But I mean, at a certain point, you just don't have any choice.
That's so funny. I like that analogy.
Yeah, that's really good.
Because that's actually, and you said you hate that it's like that. That's what I actually used to get joy out of when I would debate with people, and I would purposefully. I would think I was taking one for the team by just dealing with the idiotic bullshit, but I was doing it for the purpose of all the other people reading along. And you could, you could just tell early on that it was how it was going to go. It's like, whatever. I'll play with them for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody somewhere will learn something off of it. That's, because that's
today. You are my ball of yarn.
Exactly.
So I just want to go back to the concept of free, free college, free healthcare, free everything, and I like to point out to them that actually there is a lot of things that are already free thanks to the the wonders of the internet, right? You have Wikipedia, you have YouTube, you have Mises.org, you have how many different colleges and universities offering their courses for free online, and yet people still want free in the sense of real world work, resources being being consumed, and people with their labor just doing stuff because you think it should be paid for by theft, right?
Right.
and it's like living in the past, really. To me it's just indicative of government being a dinosaur, archaic institution that is reminiscent of medieval times, barbaric times. It's like people that haven't even come up to the present. Like, wait a minute, a lot of stuff that is beautiful is already free, and you're not taking advantage of it. You're not using it, and you're supporting theft instead.
Yeah. How is it that the people who spend a lot of time, like an inordinate amount of time, learning about economics and logic and philosophy and being consistent and applying these arguments consistency, whether it makes them comfortable or not, end up being called the utopians, and the people who think that everything is free, we're sitting around advocating for the market to determine a price for a good or service, and that should be paid voluntarily, and we're the utopian people. But the people who believe that everything should be free, they don't think that's utopian at all. How does that come around?
See, you know what, Donnie? It's funny that now that you put it that way, I have the answer to that question. It's projection. That's what it is. It's not a cop-out to call us utopians. They're actually projecting their own hate, their own self-hatred onto us, because they do realize on some level that they are the utopians.
And the bell has.
I'm gonna run with this. I like this. I like this lane of thought. I'm gonna run with this from now on for a while. I'm gonna see how this plans out.
It's like the harshest homophobe, anti-gay person is actually a closet gay.
Yes,
yeah. Right?
That's like that.
Yes.
That's study.
Truck stop Charlie.
Exactly. There was that study that came out a couple of years ago that I love throwing up when I run into people, that their first instinct is to call me homophobic names as insults when they're mad. You deal with that a lot on, like, if you go to those like the Troops of Welfare Whores and all those type of pages, the people, the hardcore nationalists that come there and get really mad really quickly. They're usually the first one to start throwing those terms around. That's my first response. I just throw that study up there. Because it's true, but it's true though. It's stuff like that.
What is the study?
Somebody wrote an article. It wasn't like I can't remember if that one was peer reviewed, but I think there was another two that were. But basically, they're trying to find out if homophobic men were really more likely to be gay. like people actually tried to do studies on this. But it's true, because it's the same in so many other facets of life where people. You project your worst image of yourself onto other people, because most people are terrified of figuring out about themselves and learning about themselves, that they'd rather throw the bad stuff out there on other people and have to. Sometimes they'll completely make it up, but usually somebody has something in them that reminds you of the horrible thing you feel about yourself, and it's just easier to attack them than attack yourself. So,
And that's where the bell for class has rung, and we've gone from Econ 101 to Psych 101. But you're absolutely right. We're just shifting gears now, and we're moving around all these basic classes that you can't miss it. There it is. It's pure projection. Everything should be free. Ponies for everybody. Never mind all you people who think that you should actually have to work and pay for it.
Well, yeah, because everything...
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
People just...
Yeah, it's like I think I remember Bill Maher describing the welfare state. He said, once the people that are pulling the wagon, or the people that are sitting in the wagon, are outnumbering the people that are pulling the wagon, that's when you're going to get, real upheaval and collapse and change. Because, I mean, of course, we don't even think there should be a wagon to begin with, or a wagon that's funded by theft, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's private charities and everything. Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's a great analogy to understand why everybody hates us. Because not only do we refuse to legitimize the people who are riding in the wagon, but we refuse to push the damn thing either. We're like, the hell with the wagon. Why doesn't everybody get a horse? No. You can't go buy a horse. Yeah, look at the wagon.
That's utopian.
That might be the title of the show. With that wagon, everybody get a horse. No, you're right though. It's people like us are hated for that, because we don't want it. We obviously don't want we don't want to do anything because we just we can't possibly have other ideas. We just want to do that. But it's funny. Like we keep touching on this, that more and more so it seems in this episode that they're so much more utopian than they want us to be, and I think this projection thing is really kind of fits actually. Yeah. That I was kind of half joking when I said it, but the more I think about it, I'm like, wait a minute, yeah, it kind of is.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that's what I mean. The free stuff is just ridiculous. I mean, you have to. It's beyond economic ignorance to actually believe that anybody could be getting anything for free the way politicians throw those terms around. Like there has to be something even more than that. Like, because even when I was economically illiterate, I still knew there was something more to the whole free idea.
I think there's even more to the analogy, because we're not even about the wagon. We're like, hey man, look, innovation. We could build a car. Look, the market will bring you a car. And they're like, but what about the Wainwrights? Who will build the wagons? You're destroying jobs. You're taking our jobs, and of course there's only child labor in the factories, and it's like, Jesus, can you get a break?
Actually, that's a great analogy, because I often talk about subsidizing perverse behavior, which is basically every government action, and the bailouts and things like that. So I say, if you don't really question subsidies or bailouts or favors or any kind of political favoritism, then going back in time, right, we had horse and buggy, and then the car came. So what would have happened if the federal government said, you know what, these people who are making have their companies in the horse and buggy industry, they have families, they have kids, they have to feed these kids. Let's subsidize those people and try to destroy this evil car industry that's trying to replace them. What would have happened, right? That would have been retarding progress, which is basically what government does anyway. But it's amazing how people don't realize that every government action destroys a portion of the free market, of voluntary interaction between consensual individuals. So I think that's important to point out.
They still are doing it. There's a good movie on YouTube called The Thorium, and it's about how you can actually have nuclear power without, the current nuclear energy paradigm kind of rotates around nuclear weapons. It's what do we do with, uranium and plutonium? And instead of looking at other things that are far better suited for nuclear power, but have zero use in a nuclear weapon. And I'm like starting to look at it a lot like cannabis. You grow hemp, and hemp has all of these industrial purposes that the paper industry doesn't want to hear about, and the oil industry doesn't want to hear about. And there's a couple other major industries trying to keep hemp out of being grown. And marijuana, or not marijuana, cannabis. My bad. I'm getting out of the old ways. I'm getting old ways.
There you go.
I caught it.
Good man.
I caught it. But it has so many medical purposes that big pharma doesn't want to deal with, and the claims that they're starting to find out that alcohol is actually the gateway drug. It's not weed; it's alcohol that makes you want cocaine and all these other things. And thorium is it's a really good. It's kind of long. It's not the you might have to do it in a couple of sessions. But I mean, just dude goes through so many ways. Like the amount of uranium in the Earth's crust is very similar to the amount of platinum. But here we are burning it for energy. Can you imagine burning platinum for energy? It's kind of obtuse. Whereas you look at the amount of thorium in the Earth's crust, and I mean, it's exponentially higher. Like I want to say uranium is like 0.0018% of the Earth's crust, whereas thorium is like 0.1. Wow. I mean, orders of magnitude. It's so much of it, and there are so many ways to do it. And they actually had a molten salt reactor, working in the 50s, but it wasn't going to produce it. It wasn't along the nuclear paradigm, so it couldn't get the funding, it couldn't get the love, and now it's starting to come back around because it's way more efficient than anything else. It's more efficient than current nuclear. It's more efficient than solar and wind. I mean, it's a very dense form of energy, very similar to uranium. And there's just so many things that we have either been balls out lied to or just never knew about. And we're starting to learn. And you know what? It's the internet. The same way that the printing press killed monarchies the world over, the internet is really, really starting to show governments for exactly what they are. And they're just a gang. They're a bunch of middlemen that operate exactly like the mafia, and they are providing no value at all.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to agree. I mean, that puts it pretty well, because they really are, and I agree with you. The internet definitely is helping in that regard. But yeah, it's true. There's so many things that I know we joke about it. I know plenty of other people have made jokes about it, and other people have claimed that there's evidence of certain things being held back. But you can see, like I remember growing up as a kid and looking at, watching the Jetsons on TV, and things like Star Trek and all that stuff. And you imagine all these things that are supposed to, be in the future. Or even like, when the second Back to the Future came out, and that was supposed to be the future, that was supposed to be around now. And you see all those things as a kid, and you're like, wow, all these things. And then you grow up and, that was just a pipe dream. And then you hear about, no, wait a minute, there's certain things. And now here we are. You look back at Star Trek and things like the little comm thing they have. Well, all right, now you have a iPhone you can hold in your hand, and you can talk to people all the way around the world on this little handheld device. And you can, do all these amazing things with, these things are here, but what else? Not only what else haven't we been told about, but how many things have been retarded in their progress coming to us that have literally held us back because of people's idea of utopia, which was the only way to bring on this progress was to have some sort of government, which continues to grow and which continues to crush innovation and progress, and then have favoritism and corporatism and all these things that certain people get into place with their products, and when a better one comes along, well, no, exactly as you were describing before, we can't have that happen. I mean, that's what ended up having hemp and cannabis made illegal in the first place. It was people like what's his name with the paper magnate from the 30s, William Randolph Hearst. And people like that who wanted to protect their industries, and they're the ones who ran. Hearst was the worst because he had the yellow journalism that was running stuff like all the anti cannabis propaganda and all that stuff. And it was even harder to get hemp because actually they just tied hemp to cannabis because nobody knew the difference at that point. Yep. But again,
the people that matter did. The people in the paper industry that were going to have completely useless, completely useless presses that wouldn't do they were all set up for wood pulp. They couldn't do hemp, and all those people fought back. It was just the masses. I know.
That's what I meant. The masses. Yeah, of course, those people, the ones who wanted to stop it and did through talking to their friends in the government and getting the favorable regulations and all that stuff. And
Yep.
You know, and again, that's somebody else's version of utopia, keeping all of these things away from us. I mean, the cannabis thing for me especially has always been a big issue because I mean, I've been a regular smoker since I actually started late in the game. I think my 22nd birthday is when I really started. You know, and I've always been a recreational user, and I've never seen a problem with it. And I've now seen so many. I've known people that I know myself, you know, that I know personally, have been helped from it, you know, from different things, for different ailments and stuff like that. When they were finally quote unquote allowed to get it in their area, you know, which is so ridiculous. Like you see, there's certain legislations going around in the current utopia in different states where they're trying to get it. You know, laws have to be passed for people at end of life stage to be able to use anything they like. At that point, if you want to use Drano because you think it will help you,
right?
Who the fuck is anybody to tell you
is
no?
Is that legal?
Well, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
But like the fact that there's actually, you had to see that legislation going around, like, is so insane. Like, okay, these people have not only been like, can not only just tell you they've been they're terminal. There is documentation from the doctors and everything saying they're terminal patients. They're definitely going to die in like 6 months or less. But the law says we're not allowed to give. You're not like. It's so insane because I mean the whole I mean I've been arguing this for the better part of my life because I've always been a pro cannabis. You know, even before I smoked, I was pro cannabis. You know, just in general, I was pro because I always had that libertarian bent to me. Why should it be anybody's business who what I put or anybody puts in their body? You know, I always had that mindset. So, and then as I got older and learned about the quote unquote possible medical benefits, because at that point, you know, back in the 80s and 90s, before it really started to take off, nobody was getting to use it anywhere for anything. So there was no studies that were allowed to be done. But you can just look back on the history books and you see how it was, you know, before it became illegal. It was used, like, it was listed in pharmaceutical books as like as a remedy or at least a pain reliever or something for like a myriad of different problems. Yeah. Like, how did it all of us, you know, again, the wonders of the utopia that is government. 1 second something's perfectly legal and people are you able to use it to try to help better themselves, and the next day, nope, sorry, we're going to throw you in jail if you attempt to better yourself.
Yep.
You know
what? Listen.
And where the utopians?
If you're out there, and you're terminal, please take some advice, okay? As soon as you get that terminal diagnosis, go and find your local weed dealer, okay? And tell him you're going to run all the dangerous shit for him just for whatever you're going to use, your own personal usage. And when you get busted, don't pay for anything. Don't pay for any of this don't pay for medical care. Go to jail and let them pay for it. They want to be assholes. They're not going to let you smoke a dime bag because you're dying. Fine, go and die on their dime. Make them take care of you the whole time. Don't burn out your resources. Burn out theirs. You're going to die anyway. Take one for the team on this one and stick them with the bill. Stick them with the bill.
You know, what really infuriates me about, you know, when you think about how much innovation has been destroyed, you know, it's like, you know, Bastiat's seen in the unseen, you know, all of the force that's been instituted by law, by regulation, you know, by taxation, it's like completely siphoning away the productivity and, you know, and the creativity of people who want to contribute real value to society. And when I understand that, then it really, you know, deeply, you know, saddens me to think how many you know, maybe life-saving or just you know, you know, ways that our standard of living could be infinitely increased. How much of that has been destroyed because of all that force that has been pointed, you know, guns pointed at, you know, peaceful people, entrepreneurs, you know, consumers, and, you know, minimum wage workers, or you know, it's just really sad. Like, talking about the energy industry, like, you know, nuclear energy basically primarily used for weapons, right? So what could be a really positive use for that? And I think, and I just wonder, like, what could have people have, what could they have imagined nuclear energy could really do? And I think, we could have, I don't know, maybe we could have mastered the weather by now. Maybe we could have harnessed the sun in a completely different way. But no, if you want solar panels, it's so expensive that you have to get government subsidies in order to get it because nobody can afford it. But I mean, people want it because it's like natural and everything. But the idea that people have to steal money from other people to get it, I think that doesn't really click with them. They're like, well, it's good. So if I get a tax break or if I get a subsidy, and it's a little bit cheaper for me, then I guess it's okay because it's still good for the environment. But wait a minute, is that coming out of violence and theft? Yeah, but that's okay because it's good for the environment. It's like right. Forget about my neighbor. It's good for the trees.
the ends justify the means, man. Don't you know that?
Right.
You know what? I had a talk with Dave a while back. You're saying that they're stifling the creativity that could be. They're not even using the creativity that is as to its fullest. And my argument for this, Dave almost lost his mind when I told him this. The oil spill in the Gulf. If I was the president of the United States, I would have shifted a 10 kiloton nuclear warhead down there, and I would have melted that whole thing shut. Now you're saying, oh, that's a nuclear weapon. In 5,000 feet of water, it's not a whole lot of anything, really. And instead of having 1 million barrels of oil floating around, killing wildlife, covering hundreds of miles of shoreline and all that, you could take just the stuff that's being done and still use it more creatively, but it's really not. So, I mean, never mind the stuff that we're missing. Why aren't even we using the things that can be used to, when you're like, I understand that's a worst case scenario. Okay, fine. What else are you saving this nuclear weapon for? Are you really expecting the Russians to come screaming through the Fulda Gap? Like that was 30 years ago, 40 years ago. Get over it. The world is changing and government, you've pointed out that 100 times, government is always 25 years behind. They're always trying to preserve what was 5 years ago. They're never really getting into where do we need to be in 5 years.
Well, of course, because if you start thinking ahead, it gives people the opportunity to see how much you're actually not needed. When they if you purposefully retard things and convince people that you're still needed because this is the way things it becomes a short-term appeal to antiquity, where you have to, this is the way it's been done. This is we have to keep doing it, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Where these things will come. Well, what would happen? I mean, there's all the talk, conspiracy, whatever it is behind Tesla and what happened to him and what his ideas were that may or may not have been actually been able to be brought to fruition. And how many more Teslas were out there that just never even got any prominence because government just stepped all over them because somebody else in a competing industry or on the same path like Tesla and Edison. Edison got all the money, right? Isn't that how it worked? He got all the government grants and stuff like that. He won out. Like how many more Teslas were there in that aspect? How many more people like him were just out there on their own and just getting stepped on by people in with the paper industry not wanting the hemp industry to take off because that would supplant them. How many? You're right. The numbers are absolutely untold. We'll never have any idea, which goes kind of goes back to that one of my favorite Higgs quotes with the end of it. How anarchists didn't do this and didn't do this. And that's why the burden of proof, because it is people look at us and think we're talking about utopia. It's like, well, no, there's some pretty good ideas. They've been put into action throughout time, and they're still, on some level, people live in an anarchic state now, and they don't even realize it. So these things are not just completely hypothetical, but you're putting against the state, which just has all this history of horribleness. Yep.
I'll beat the utopian drum one more time. We're saying this functional system that you think is not utopian, that it's this pragmatic beautiful thing that's bringing forth civilization. This week was the anniversary of gay rights, or the women getting to vote. That was the anniversary this week, but it's the same story arc for gays getting to marry. Which group of people was preventing these actions to begin with? The same group of people who, after overwhelming support to the point where the people are ready to just ignore the current law anyway, then show up, they change the law, and they declare they've done such a good thing for society. We're moving forward because government has allowed it to move forward. We're trailblazing the way. No, you're not. You're the people who are causing the problem. You are the stumbling block. You know, the government is a self-licking lollipop. Like, that's it. No, there's no two ways about it. You might not understand that a lot because of the economic. It takes a lot to learn the economics and learn how each of those actions is really functionally retarded. But there it is. If you don't want to do economics and you don't want to do all the logic shit, just think about women getting the right to vote. Who stopped them to begin with, and who suddenly declared themselves the victor when they did it, and how? It was already what people were going to do anyway. So really, I mean, just wake up. The statist paradigm really is utopia. Anarchy sucks. It's hard and it's gritty, and you might not, somebody might break your window and you might just end up paying for it in the long run. It sucks. But you know what? All that shit happens now under a system of oppressive, cronyistic nonsense that is literally killing people.
Yeah, so I think we should just finish up with our final remarks. I just want to finish up by saying, going back to Jeremy, what you were saying about, all the creators and inventors that have been destroyed, because of regulation, because of laws, like Tesla, like people like Tesla. There's a great documentary by this guy, Gary Null. He's like a health advocate. He writes a bunch of books and he makes award-winning documentaries. He made one called the FDA's Cult of Tyranny, right? And it's basically all about how so many different people who discovered, natural holistic cures to cancer. That's kind of the funny thing when people say, in the future we're going to find the cure for cancer. And I'm like, wait, just remove all the violence, and I think it's already been found. You just don't know about it because you didn't hear about it because it wasn't told in your government school. But people like there's a Gerson therapy, there's SEAC therapy, there's all different kinds. It's just amazing when I learned about that. And there's another great documentary, which is it's like the forbidden cures, the forbidden cures of cancer, and it's all these people, and if you read about them, they all end basically the same. They gain prominence. They find this new method, it's successful, and then then the FDA comes crashing down on top of them, and then they have a mysterious accident, and all their records and their cases, their case files get destroyed, burned, and then they're blacklisted, censored, and but you never hear about them again. And that happens time and time again. And talking about cancer, like there is still the Gerson therapy, which is it's an all holistic on raw organic vegetable fruit juices, things like that, enemas, but it's illegal. It's illegal for a person to do the Gerson therapy in the United States, right? But they do it in Mexico. And so I'm like telling people, if this is so, like, if it's so dangerous, why are people flocking to it? Like, people are on their deathbed and they're flocking to Mexico. They don't want to go the legal route, which is basic chemo radiation surgery, which kill so many more people that the government is willing to admit. And it's just amazing. Like, just the FDA alone, how much medical innovation has been destroyed because of these arcane institutions. It just really depresses me when I think about it. But it really it gives me all the more impetus and drive to to do what we do. So spread the message of liberty. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's scary and sad to think about stuff like that. Like, what, I mean, to put on the tinfoil hat for a second, there was a time when I believe the all the stuff that gets thrown around about the government creating most of these drugs and not those drugs, the diseases, and forcing them on people. I mean, obviously there was stuff like the what was it, the Tuskegee experiments where they actually did
Tuskegee, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't they were actually injecting them with syphilis and stuff like that.
The black people, right?
Yeah. So like they were, so they, I mean, there is those examples, but people, if you go full blown conspiracy, I've heard people, with AIDS and cancer, and they created it and they're just waiting for to eventually turn the spigot off and be like, okay, it's gone. We have the cure. But even if you don't think of it from that angle, if you just look at it from the other side of what actually has happened,
you don't even need to think about that, right?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like the reality is actually even worse. Like it's people look at the conspiracy stuff like, oh, that's ridiculous. It's horrible. It's like, no, the reality is worse, man. Look at it. Like, look at how much stuff has been held off. And like, it's like even as simple as even getting away from medication for a second, just from like the turnaround that's had to happen in the past couple of years about eggs and bacon and butter. Like those have like people who have been not using this stuff for years because they were told by people like the FDA that it was bad for you and you shouldn't eat this stuff and eat this margarine, which is like killing people, and and just and stay away from bacon, and it's hard, like all this stuff, and it's like, and now all these what people think are these fad diets like paleo and all this stuff are coming, and people are like, no, you can eat this stuff, it's good for you, trust it's good for you, and now all of a sudden it's the FDA is like, wait, we had to make a mistake, or they didn't even say it. It's like new information is like it's not like, oh no, we just totally gave you a snow job because it helped somebody at the time to outlaw these things and get rid of these things, but it just like you see it all the time, and it's like, if you actually sit and think about it, what else is out there? What could have been? It's scary because we could have been so much further. And again, these diseases, and especially if you're somebody who's lost somebody due to one of these diseases, then you think about it, you get even more mad. I've lost a few people to cancer. It's like, yeah, this information, some of it was out there and it was kept from us. Like, kind of messed up, So I mean, but that is the pit of despair we find ourselves in with dealing with the idiots in statism. Unfortunately, they keep retarding progress and looking at us like we're the crazy ones for actually wanting to move forward. Because to go back to what we touched on at the beginning of the show about how all forms of government are essentially a utopia in somebody's eyes, like even if you want to believe that government is necessary, well, look at the trajectory. And, what supposedly was built here was supposed to be the freest yet, and it went horribly wrong. So isn't the next logical step to keep getting freer? Because that's the path everybody was on anyway. So, like I said, to again reiterate what I said at the very beginning, the whole idea that it's utopian can be just taken apart very easily by pointing out that every system is somebody's form of utopia, or by pointing out that no, freedom is dangerous. I get that. I'm willing to take that risk, so it's not really a utopia. But even if you still want to stay stuck in that mindset, if you can at least agree that these ideas, even if you want to say they sound good on paper, like, because you get that a lot too. It's like, oh, it sounds good on paper, but this is the real world. It's not going to work here in the real world. More sophistry.
Right. Those are people that say, well, that sounds good, but I'm a realist.
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah, any variation of that. It's because it's a put down. It's a put down of you.
A soft insult, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's a subtle insult and a deflection all at the same time, and it's not an argument. Not an argument. Sorry. But when they if you come to that point, well, okay, so we can at least agree that this would be the ideal. Why the hell aren't you willing to work towards the ideal? That's what I don't get about people. Like, even if you want to think that we're idealists, if you agree with the ideal on paper, why wouldn't you want to work towards it? You know, does that really make us the crazy? How crazy are we for wanting to work towards the ideal that we agree on versus you who agree to it but are willing to stay in somebody else's utopia?
I agree that rape is immoral, but I mean, it's just ideal to expect everybody. So I should be able to rape if I want.
Yeah.
I mean, stop being.
Somebody's gonna rape, so it might as well be me.
Yeah, exactly.
Lay down.
I'm gonna boil it down super simple and super stupid. Anarchist logic is: give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for the rest of his life. And statist logic is: make a man a fire, he's warm for the rest of the night. Light a man on fire, he's warm for the rest of his life. Now, this sounds really similar, but it's really important to understand the difference. It's super, super important.
Oh, man. Have you ever done stand-up comedy? No.
No, dude. I had to make myself happy in a dirt hole with nothing.
Oh, man.
With nothing for a long time. So, and I love to joke around. I love the kid, but really think about that, because there are people out there who are like, that's right, man. He'll be good for the rest of his life. and it's painful, but there it is. Like, it really is that. It sounds good logic, but it doesn't follow. It really doesn't in the end. And if you don't know the difference, there you are.
Yeah.
There you are. You just literally don't get it. So don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. That's all I can say.
And one more thing I'd like to say is that when people talk about what about the road, what about the poor, what about the sick, and I'm like, well, what does that have to do with me wanting to keep what I earned? And that which I voluntarily traded, and being a good, decent, moral person. What does the roads have to do with that? I'm just a human being that treats my neighbor with respect, the same respect that I want to be treated, and that's it. Forget about the roads. Forget about healthcare. Forget about who's going to, China and Russia.
And let me tell you the flaw in that logic, because the guy next door who's completely, genuinely okay with paying taxes is absolutely okay with treating you the same way as he treats himself. He really is okay with you paying taxes. He really, really is. So when you have to do it, it's just like, tough shit, I do it. I'm okay with it. Why aren't you? So that's really not going to work on that guy.
Yeah. So, right. Everyone who's a statist is a utopian. That's the basic is the true utopian. That's the basic message. So awesome conversation. Thank you very much, gentlemen. So this has been the Seeds of Liberty podcast. If anyone wants to donate, we accept Bitcoin, PayPal, and you can also donate through our Patreon page, which we encourage everyone to visit. Dave made a great introductory video over there, so check him out. He's the mascot for our Seeds of Liberty logo. Thank you very much, Dave, for posting yourself as a silhouette. We are deeply in your debt. So
Dave is my spirit animal.
Do not shave that thing, Dave, because it's making you immortalized in history. You can just to say, you can follow us on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher, and Facebook. You can find all those links on theseedsofliberty.com. So this has been the Seeds of Liberty podcast. Wishing everyone have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Peace.
Out.